Hi, this is Craig Wesco recording for s2p.org, and today we're going to be talking about Daniel. So Daniel was a man of God from the Old Testament. He's one of the prophets, and the context of this, some backstory about Daniel. He was chosen as one of the best and brightest youth in all the land. So King Nebuchadnezzar said, let's bring in all of the best and brightest people that we have, and I'll train them for 3 years, then I'll decide who's going to be my personal servants. That's sort of the backstory of the book of Daniel. So now Daniel, his commitment was to God, and so are his those who are with him. So it was Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. They're each given different names as well. So basically what happened was they brought Daniel and his compatriots in, and they said, okay, we're going to give you this food, the king's delicacies. So it would presumably be the choicest meats and those kinds of things. And Daniel and his friends were like, okay, that's not what God wants from us. And so we are not going to defile ourselves with the king's delicacies. And instead, they asked to be given only vegetables and water. And this is where, if you've ever heard of the Daniel fast, this is where it comes from. So let's think about why they said this. So let's look at Proverbs 23:3. So in Proverbs 23, it says, when you sit down to eat with a ruler or a king, consider carefully what is before you. Do not desire his delicacies, for they are deceptive food. So Daniel was following that guidance that was in Proverbs. So now this is what happens. So the servant, the steward, who is feeding Daniel and his compatriots, he says, well, I don't want to get in trouble. If I feed you only vegetables and water, then you're going to look all sickly, and the king's going to be like, well, what, are you not doing your job? And so Daniel said, okay. Test us for 10 days, only give us vegetables and water, and you'll see that we are in better shape than everyone else. So this is what happens. He says, please test your servants for 10 days. This is Daniel chapter 1, verse 12. And let them give us vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then let our countenances be examined before you, and the countenances of the young men who eat the portion of the king's delicacies. And as you see fit, so deal with your servants. So the steward who was in charge of feeding them, they consented and said, okay, we're going to test you for 10 days. And this is what he found. At the end of the 10 days, their countenance appeared better and fatter in flesh than all the young men who ate the portion of the king's delicacies. So they appeared healthier by eating vegetables and water. Interesting, because that's the original diet that God gave us, was this fruit and vegetables, and so they're just eating this diet that actually made them look healthier. And then thus the steward took away their portion of delicacies and the wine that they were to drink, and gave them vegetables. So they said, we're not going to drink wine, we're not going to eat the meats of the king, we're going to only eat vegetables and drink water. And then in 17 it says, as for these 4 young men, God gave them knowledge and skill in all literature and wisdom, and Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. So they gained all this knowledge and wisdom, because of course they're following the wisdom of God laid out in Proverbs. And then Nebuchadnezzar took them in and interviewed them, as he was interviewing everyone else who was eating his delicacies. And so when he interviews them, it's their turn. He's like, okay, I'm going to decide if you are going to be the ones that serve me. And this is what Nebuchadnezzar found when he interviewed Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. It says in verse 20, and in all matters of wisdom and understanding about which the king examined them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and astrologers who were in all his realm. So it's interesting how Daniel said, you know what? I'm not going to eat these choicest foods, these meats that the king is giving to us. Instead, we're going to remain faithful to this commitment that we made to God, and we're going to serve God, and we're going to eat only vegetables and drink water. And this is how God blessed them. So there's two things going on here that I think we can take away from this. The first is that when you remain faithful to God and maintain your commitment, God will bless you. He blessed them to be 10 times wiser than everyone else. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is that when we think of Genesis 1:29, the diet that God gave us was to eat fruit and vegetation, and to not eat animals and drink milk and eat eggs and whatever other kind of things that people eat that would be considered delicacies. And so when we trust in that wisdom that God gives us and says this is the diet that is best for you, then we are also blessed. That we are given, in this case with Daniel, it not only says that they were blessed with wisdom, that they were 10 times wiser than everyone else that was interviewed, but also that they appeared healthier, which is interesting. So they appeared healthier, and they were much wiser than everyone else. So and they were following God. That's what their commitment was, and they were also following God's wisdom and instruction as far as what to eat. So I think that it would be wise not only to try the Daniel fast, but then to also stick with it, because it's not just about fasting for a time to get closer to God. That's the start of it, but now it should be a lifelong thing. Every day we should live that way. So this is Craig Wesco recording for s2p.org.